This game became the most downloaded application and generated $50,000 per day before being finally deleted for unknown reasons. Flappy Bird is a mobile game created in 2013 by Dong Nguyen, in which the game revolves around an incarnate bird in a 2D universe inspired by 8-bit platform games. It's interesting because it's a style of game that was rather popular in the years 80 to 90, and then with the evolution of graphics and the capabilities of developers, the style has fallen a bit into disuse, until the beginning of the years 2010, which started remembering retro gaming, as we would not have just given Call Me Maybe, and the breakup of Kristen Stewart with Robert Pattinson, two major cultural events. Dong Nguyen is a Vietnamese web developer who was 2008 years old and who lives in Hanoi with his parents. He founded his video game company Dotgears in 2005 at the age of 20. And since then he has created several games for a while in the same spirit of the very punitive genre where if you make an error you go back to the beginning, always in 8 bits. But Flappy Birds has been a huge success. Flappy Birds was developed in 3 days and the system of remuneration in the game was super primitive, unlike many of today's games like Candy Crush or Red Shadow Legend. No bonus to pay, no additional life against credits, just the old advertising. The game is incredibly simple. On the screen, the character climbs towards the game and has to avoid obstacles until infinity and see at which point he can make a good score. And as it was made in 3 days, it is one of those things that have made people on the internet ticker a bit, not least the pipes between which the bird must pass, which resembles a scene similar to those of Super Mario. And the reason for this, it is simple, it's because these are those of Super Mario. The colors are also very similar and all like that, giving a little sensation of bootleg, a bit like the cassettes of the Little Siren that these guys used to tease Tati. And this is the same thing. Briefly Dengue started playing in 2013 and no one is playing. At launch, nothing passed. The trick is a monumental flop. Until January 2014, when it started attracting attention and becoming viral. To give you an idea, you may have the impression that the game has existed for months or years, but in fact not. It has been removed quite quickly on February 9th, 2014 from all the App Store. So if you are always on your phone, you will be able to continue playing, but the time of availability of the game is actually super current. And like all the games of this era, the best publicity is the mouth in the ear. And here it is like a coup with many mouths that are going to start talking about Flappy Bird and many ears who are ready to hear. Faced with this dazzling success, PewDiePie at the time will make a video which will create even more buzz. And all the critics will write articles to make their fingers bleed explaining that they do not understand the success of the thing. With its rudimentary design that seems to copy Mario completely, they will consider the virality of the game as an anomaly. We must remember that in 2014, most adults still wonder if video games don't make kids violent. They watch other adults on their TV 8 hours a day talking about is, wouldn't that make our children addicted to screen? And Flappy Bird will not escape the rule. Its game system is simple and very addictive, and will be strongly criticized, considered almost dangerous. In short, we know the drill. Video games are bad, read books, and then there is milk that will fall directly into their little mouths. This sentence is disgusting. The newspapers are all headlines about the case of a teenager who stabbed his brother 17 times in the chest after an altercation because of Flappy Bird. Well, basically according to the newspapers, the big brother made fun of his little brother who couldn't beat his score in the game. The little brother took a knife and stabbed him repeatedly. Except that in fact, it was a hoax from a satirical site. False information that was so widely shared on the web that the traditional media believed it and picked it up. And as always in these cases, these denials are not necessarily seen by everyone, and the fear of video games has increased as if they had a hypnotizing power over kids from which they absolutely must be protected. And faced with the enormous interest shown by the press in the game and its creator, Dong Nguyen answered no. He categorically refuses invitations for interviews, all that. He does not want to interact with the media, and he will only address his audience via his Twitter account, @Denggator. The next day, there is an article that will be published in The Verge which will try to estimate by calculating the revenues from the game. And according to the author of the article, an American named Ellis Hamburger, obviously, Deng would win $50,000 per day with Flappy Bird. $50,000 per day is huge, but even more for an independent mobile game at the time. The article will attract even more interest from the media and the general public, And it also mentions the rumors of plagiarism from Nintendo, which will swell everywhere, particularly in terms of the color palette and the pipes which are used in Flappy Bird. The article mentions that Nintendo could take legal action against him for theft of intellectual property. It's not your pipes, it's my pipes. At the same time, there was another rumor which was going to gain momentum in the face of the success of the game, because as we said, the success of this game was not immediate, but it was then dazzling. And in fact, there were very few reviews left on the App Store until January 2014, and all of a sudden, there are hundreds and thousands of reviews popping up out of nowhere, which starts to raise questions among journalists and budding web investigators. And rightly so, because evolution is super suspicious and it seems completely unnatural. For example, the Twitter application had 62,000 reviews on the store at the time, while its game had 75,000. This seems a bit stupid. So should Dong follow his game with mass-purchased reviews? At this time, we don't really know, but it's a possibility. Regardless, there are probably plenty of developers who use a similar technique without achieving the same result. So this game must still have something. Well, ups and downs, a lot of success, a lot of money, and the rumors and the not always positive tension that go with it. Until then, even if we can suspect something dark, nothing would explain the pure disappearance simple game. Until February 8, 2014, where Dong will publish a series of tweets in which he explains that within 22 hours after their publication, he will remove Flappy Bird from all application stores permanently. Following the deletion of the application, both the public and the media found themselves on their ass. It was as sudden as it was unexpected, and as a result, the craziest theories will spread at high speed. The most popular, it is that of the deletion of the application following legal pressure from Nintendo, because for those who aren't in the know, anything Nintendo and copyright, they're hot guys. Concretely, you just have to put an image of Mario Kart in a YouTube video, it sends you to Nintendo dungeon in Nintendo prison, and you come out Nintendo never again. It's few guys. During this theory, it was taken down a few days later by none other than Nintendo themselves, who in an article in the famous British newspaper The Guardian on February 11, declared that they had nothing to do with the removal of the game, and that they never even initiated legal proceedings against its creator. A French creator called Cake, on the other hand, will accuse Dong Nguyen of plagiarism without going as far as legal action, because he himself created a game in 2011, a game called, I quote, Pew Pew Against the Cactuses. It's a banger. Imagine, it was that which had broken through in place of Flappy Bird, all the Americans there. Oh, it's a very good game. Have you heard of Pew Pew Against the Cacti? French culture? In his game, a bird flies between cactuses with a single press of a button on the screen. Bird, green obstacle, single button. Well, it's true that it looks similar. After that, the gameplay is not revolutionary either. There are plenty of games that look like other games. And then if Dong Nguyen is indeed borrowed stuff from other games, he did it in several ways, which makes Flappy Bird a kind of video game patchwork more than a plagiarism of a single game. For his part, Dong will remain silent, which will lead to other rumors, including a widely shared one according to which he committed suicide, which is however completely false. After some time, he finally agreed to come back to the whole affair in an exclusive interview given for Forbes magazine. In the interview, he explains that the game was originally created to relax, but that it had become much too addictive and that posed a problem for him. It's true that it's the least relaxing game in the world, and therefore he would have decided to delete the game. Problem solved. In another interview that he later gave to Rolling Stone magazine, he explained that he began to appear in newspapers and on Vietnamese TV, and that this was how his parents learned that it was the creator of the game. Moreover, we can note that the guy had very little desire to shelter the Daron, because he was quietly doing 50k a day without saying anything to his parents while he was living in their basement. He doesn't put his sister in the shelter, he puts his sister in the bus shelter. She is indeed the one. Interest was in his game growing. Journalists will besiege the family home, and he explains that what was already stifling quickly became unlivable. And we can understand that. All this attention at once of enormous intensity, it seems to be the real reason for the elimination of the game. In any case, much more than these questions of risk of addiction to the game by teenagers. Even if it's true that when he announced the removal of the game on Twitter, he also quickly added another tweet saying, "I won't sell Flappy Bird." But obviously, If he was able to develop the game in 3 days, other developers were able to do the same. And that's how the app stores ended up with more or less messed up birds, switching between different types of obstacles with just a tap on the screen. There were obviously a lot of gaming YouTubers who did tutorials on this game, and also who made a video in which we see them playing these counterfeit copies of the original game, shortly after the official application was deleted. Moreover, if you also want to start your counterfeiting of birds that don't fly well, know that there are YouTube tutorials for coding a Flappy Bird. It has become a reference in Scratch or in C#, and special mention also to Flocculus Bird, which allows you to play Flappy Bird in VR from the bird's point of view, so with the pipes facing you. Simple genius, in fact. In short, as soon as it disappeared, as soon as it was revived, the game was so as not to delete phones on which it had been downloaded, so it did not directly lose popularity. And those who had not had the chance to install the game time were satisfied with the crappy copies that existed in abundance on the App Store. In any case, the concept was giga-popular. And even today, if we only needed one historical example of the popularity of this game, we still find old crappy smartphones that have the original game pre-installed, over $100 on eBay. As for Don, he continued to make games trying to make them more relaxing. At the same time, it's not going to be very complicated. They never met the success of Flappy Bird, no doubt to the great pleasure of its creator, and he resumed a more normal life by returning to anonymity, still enriched by several $100,000.